is Dad?
I think Dad has made some excellent progress today.
Your dad, he's a fun guy, right?
And I love him so much, and I think he's the greatest dad in the world.
Welcome back to the Working on the Dad Pod. It's just me and Ethan tonight. It feels a little lonely in here after a couple straight weeks of guests. We were going to sing a bad duet for you, but I think we decided against that, or at least I did. I don't know. Maybe Ethan was keying up some tunes. But
let's just say it was a solo decision to not do a duet.
Yeah. Well, tonight we have skipped story time thanks to our wonderful guest. Shout out again to our dads and to David Ubben for joining us on the show. We've skipped story time to get straight into conversing with our guests. And that led us to tonight that we're just going to kind of have a long story time, catch up on how our summers have been going, what's been going on with us, what's been going on with the kids, a little bit of working on the dad pod. Before we get into all that, friendly reminder to like and subscribe to us, especially on YouTube, where we post all of our episodes first. But if you prefer audio formats because you can't stand to look at our faces, we understand. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all the major platforms. If there's a platform we're not on, let us know. Probably not going to get on it, but good to know.
Yeah.
Ethan,
I think,
how you doing, man?
doing well. So for those of you tuning in tonight, we've pretty much gone about 4 weeks without telling you all about our lives. Between we did an episode on a topic. Look it up. I don't remember what it was. And then we had the blind ranking game. We had our dads. We had David Ubben from the New York Times Athletic, which is still really cool that he actually took the time to talk to us. That was great.
Yeah.
So, you basically haven't heard about our lives in about 4 weeks. So we just thought this was a good opportunity to share that with you. And honestly, neither of us really wanted to prepare a topic today. So let's just, no reason to lie to you, millions of you, and then be put on record as if.
I also think this is something, as we consider the format of the show, that we may do more of, where we just kind of riff on story time. Because I think there are some weeks we're definitely coming up with the one big thing that happened that week.
Sure.
But I also think we are making a concerted effort to have more guests. So we may do a few guests, a fun episode like the one that you'll hear next week, and then like a story time dump of all the things that, I feel like there's always one or two things that we sign off for the night and I go, oh shoot, I meant to mention that because pretty good story. But,
yeah. Well, I'll just get right into it. When you last heard us, or not when you last heard us, but 4 weeks ago, I had mentioned that in the week later would be my daughter's graduation, and I will. You know what? I undersold it a bit. I had mentioned that there is 2 tracks at my daughter's preschool for her age group in the state of Maryland. You have to be 5 by September 1st to go to kindergarten. She has a November birthday, so therefore that was not the case. So this year she was actually in something called junior kindergarten, which was basically accredited kindergarten with the hours of preschool and the social aspect of preschool. So academic kindergarten, social preschool. It's accredited though. So let's say we move to a different state. She in theory could go into first grade. So what this was this actually was a kindergarten graduation. She is just through no fault of her own. Going to be repeating kindergarten next year when she goes to public school. The actual preschool class, the one that's across the room from her, had their graduation the night before. So she actually did have a kindergarten graduation. It was pretty emotional. It kicked off with a short little video, and alphabetically, her picture came up first. It was her first day at the school, and then a picture of her in her cap and gown, and her mom just cried instantly. I cried about 2 seconds later, so stood strong. And it was a fun little night, and that obviously very big moment in her life so far. And I think she's still in summer session at that same school, because just weirdly in this area, a lot of the summer camps won't take you if you're younger than 6. So we don't really have an option, and frankly did not want to go through the planning of we're doing this week, we're doing this that week, we're doing that around, and this was just easier. We do the summer session with everybody that she regularly knows, and then there's about 5 or 6 others in her class that she will be going to the same elementary school. There's going to be 6 kindergarten classes, so hopefully she'll have at least one friend in her class. She did not win the immersion lottery for Spanish or English, so she is just going to regular kindergarten. A couple of her friends are learning Spanish. One is learning French. So they will be bilingual, and she will just be that all-American little girl around her bilingual multicultural friends. But it'll be fun. I think
I got a curveball question for you.
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned your daughter's doing junior kindergarten, and it's accredited, and she could, in theory, go into first grade or something like that in another state. Have you and your wife discussed at all the idea of skipping a grade?
We didn't really discuss it because the public school is very rare. So what's weird in Maryland is I understand picking September 1 as just like the arbitrary cutoff day. The thing that's really weird is that they've chosen October 15th as the cutoff testing date. So if you have a late birthday or an early birthday like her, or late, however you look at it, and they're like, well, she might be a little young, but academically she's there. She's not allowed to test in because her birthday is after October 15th. That is some state law in Maryland.
Is that just for first grade, or is that like going forward for rest of school?
That's for starting in kindergarten. I mean, the
reason I ask, right? Like my wife and I have had conversations. My daughter has a late October birthday, and had the conversations. She's doing pretty well academically, and we had conversations with our kindergarten teacher. And the thing is, in Florida, you can't skip kindergarten. And so the question wasn't about skipping kindergarten, but we have had like future planning conversations about, would we want her to skip first grade? Would we want her to skip second grade? Like, would we want to have that? And the feedback we got from the teacher, which I think is obviously a super valuable input that kind of trumps, our too close to the situation parental feelings. But our feedback was academically, probably, socially, she's right where she needs to be kind of message. And I'm like, okay, loud and clear.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be a struggle for her right now to be a little bit ahead of some of her classmates, which totally great. But yeah, that was more the question of like, once she gets in the system, have you guys had conversations about maybe moving her past first grade to second?
So we talked about it actually in a different way. So because of her essentially needing this extra year of daycare kindergarten, essentially a year of private school kindergarten, we've paid for it, right? Like, she will now be academically ahead of the rest of her class, coming in almost 6 years old. Socially, she might still be where she needs to be. But like, there's actually it's a sunk cost now. So when we're thinking about, okay, well, do we want to send her to college in 12 years instead of 13? Well, honestly, we'd rather just save money. And especially if she's going to be at the top of her class in theory, just by having the better start. It became more of a financial thing. That's why I actually, when our second daughter was born and we knew we'd have to do a second C-section belly birth. When the doctor said, I'm available August 31st or September 2nd, we were like, August 31st. Like, that was financial planning right then and there, where we're like, we are not going to be forced to pay
for a whole other year.
Yeah. I mean, we might choose to, but like, it's going to be our decision. So
right. Yeah. And I think, the way my wife and I actually talked about it, because we had the same sort of realization of like that starts the clock earlier on paying for college in the future. We actually, thought of maybe having her apply to colleges, get in and take that gap year that they do offer you. That not a lot of people take advantage of. And then she'd be back with her original like kindergarten aged classmates in her freshman year of college. But so far the idea has been tabled indefinitely, just because of the teacher feedback. It's not something we're pushing for, but I find it to be an interesting conversation point for any of our listeners out there who might find their kid in such a position and thinking about it. Because I think it cuts both ways. There's pluses, there's minuses.
Yeah. Another thing is, I too am I'm an October birthday, like your daughter. I was one of the oldest in my class. There's something kind of nice when you do get to college about being 21 for most of your junior year instead of right at the end of junior year, So I do, that not that I'm like thinking about
obviously the academics first kind of mindset that we're looking for. I think another factor for us, just in convenience, not to take up the whole time talking about skipping grades, but like another factor for us was just that my son, while he's only 3.5 years younger than my daughter, just because of the way things work, like they're a full 3 years apart in school, and pushing that to 4 meant that, things, and again, small potatoes if you're looking out for your kid, but it's like one less year that they overlap in elementary school and we have to send them to different schools. Only like no years that they would overlap in high school if we gave them a 4-year gap, right? Right now, my daughter's set up to be a senior when my son's a freshman. Great. That, that works out. She can drive it. Fantastic. But when you skip that gap, there's a few things that like logistically, again, that was icing on top of an already sort of confirmed decision with some other reasons against it.
Yeah. And I think my brother and I are the same as your kids and my kids. He was a freshman when I was a senior. It was nice for him to have me there.
Not to toot my own horn, but honk honk, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, for us, it's been a pretty, I don't know, eventfully chaotic summer, and not really because of the kids, right? We've sent my daughter to the YMCA camp a little bit. My son, Steady Eddie, going to his daycare for summer camp. And that's been pretty rock solid. We sent my daughter to YMCA camp for the first 2 weeks of summer. The last 3 weeks, including this week, she has been at sort of a nerd camp where she's been doing it's a STEAM-focused tutoring center that does summer camps. And so she's been doing things like Minecraft engineering. One is Pokemania that she's doing, and a session this week on robotics and coding that she's really into. And next week she goes to Super Nerd Camp, which is just robotics camp, which is a separate thing run by the robotics team from the local high school. But the thing that frustrates me, and I've mentioned this in the Working on the Dad Bod segment, is like getting the kids to and from. It's really like shifted our schedule, right? We had it down pat during the school year. I take my daughter to school, go to the gym. After the gym, take my son. But now both kids need to be where they need to be at 9, and they're on opposite sides of town, or at least a solid like 10, 12 minutes away from each other. And so it has cut into the workout time and all of that. But one thing that frustrates the heck out of me is like these camps. So we got nerd camp and we got super nerd camp. Nerd camp, they hand me a sheet of paper this week. that I would be really frustrated about if my daughter was not in her last week at this camp for the summer, but that like, oh, by the way, we're moving our location further away from, obviously didn't market it as such, but like, we're moving 20 minutes away from you. And I'm like, you handed me this piece of paper yesterday to tell me that this move is happening on Monday. Awesome. Thanks for the heads up. Again, it doesn't matter. Super Nerd Camp, they operate out of the school board building, which is closer than the YMCA, which is really close, right? And so easy to get to, but that building is under construction. So they're going to be at the high school, which is about the same distance right now as regular Nerd Camp. And that makes it, just another week of, oh, this is a little more inconvenient. And next week we have the misfortune, poor pitiful us, but my mom is going on a vacation to visit some of her family. And so we won't have anybody to do pickups, and both my son and my daughter's camps end abruptly at the same time and start at the same time on opposite sides of town. And so it's going to be a fun week, figuring out, drop-offs and pickups before we head out on our own vacation, all while the biggest work project I've ever been a part of is launching, wrapping, whatever you want to call it, on Monday and Tuesday. So
congrats.
Yeah, it's going to be something. I'm kind of sleep deprived now, and I don't think it's going to get better until the weekend after this one. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at, like logistics and moving the kids around wise. But so far so good, and they've been pretty flexible, and they've been pretty great with all of that.
Nice. That's good.
What else is going on with you?
Let's see. Next thing on my list that I want to talk about. So, my almost 3-year-old is pretty much fully potty trained, which is pretty great. It's been forever since an accident. We got the pooping down in those first 2 weeks, unlike the year and a half of poop corners and 99% of the way there on potty trains with my older daughter. We use Reese's Reese's peanut butter cup minis was her reward choice. Kind of bigger than like an M&M, but we really wanted to hammer this one home. So that was pretty great. I know I mentioned last week that this when we go on our vacation on the 3rd week of July, it'll actually be the first car ride with everybody using potties. And I do think what we might do, so I will say this, she sleeps in a diaper still, because and she naps in a pull-up just in case of an accident. We might do pull-ups in the car just in case, because 4-hour drive, we don't want to take
and obviously you're going to plan stops, but at the same time, kids that are just learning to potty train that have had like free access to a potty anytime they've needed it don't always give you the heads up, and you can just pass like the sign that says next exit 6 miles, and you're just like,
exactly. Yeah, we think she's made it through most car rides. It's just simply like this will be a 4-hour car ride. So let's
because for
let's
most
just take that
rides,
insurance.
You do as they call in Bluey's family a tactical wee. We call it a tactical wee. You do a tactical wee before we leave. And it's like, I don't have to go. Just try. We're doing a tactical wee. Whereas my father-in-law calls it squeeze out a few drops.
I love it. Yeah. So that's I'm excited to hopefully we purchase our diapers at Costco, 190 of them at a time. So I am hoping not to have to make too many of those purchases anymore, depending on when we think she can, once we get, I don't know what I forget what the magic number was with our older daughter of just like how many dry diapers in a row at night before we were like, all right, she's not peeing at night. So that's kind of where I want to be. Yeah. So, yeah. What else you got? so far this summer?
I had, I think I mentioned this on our last sort of full recorded episode. Hadn't really talked about it since, but my wife went on a cruise to Alaska. And so I had the kids from Friday night to the following Monday morning, right? And by the following, I mean like 10 days later, whatever that is.
Not 3 days for the millions of you confused by that sentence. Yes. Yeah.
Getting them to camp, feeding them, doing all the bedtimes, all of that stuff. And shout out to my mom. She was a huge help. She picked up my son every day from school, camp, whatever, at 3:00. And then my daughter was at the Y that week. And so that was one where it's like technically pickup can be until 6:00. So like I didn't have any, and I could also drop her off at the Y before doing my workout. Right. And so it was an easy breezy, smooth thing there. And I will say I did not have what I would call a sustainable week, as in like I didn't do it every week. But what I definitely tried to do is I tried to make each night fun. I tried to make each night different, and I tried to get the kids involved. And so I've obviously talked about getting the kids involved in making dinner as a tool for getting them more invested in dinner. But part of the reason I specifically did it this week is this particular week when my wife was in Alaska was it kept me from having to like mediate fights or deal with requests or all that other stuff because they were just there with me doing the thing I was doing. And so the first night we did a taco bar, right? And so, there's some white people taco night, throw some ground beef in the pan, some taco seasoning, and then just arrange all the toppings, have them up there, filling out their tacos. And like, wouldn't you know it, like we get in the store and I'm like, you guys want soft tacos? You want hard tacos? They're not going to agree. They're siblings. So one of them wanted hard, one of them wanted soft. And shout out to Old El Paso. They had a combo pack. And so we got some hard, we got some soft. We did it up. We did another night with make your own pizzas where I just made the dough. I had them roll it out however they wanted. I had jarred sauce, shredded cheese. They had picked out pineapple as one of the fruits they wanted on the menu that week. So I had some pineapple, pepperoni, I had some olives. I had all the things. I had like some breakfast sausages that they could crumble up on there, just a little bit of everything. And, they went to town. They both ended up doing basically the same pizza, ironically enough. But they had their own and they had fun with it. And they enjoyed it. And then the other nights we did like this thing called duck pin bowling. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but we just did duck pin bowling. There's a place near us that's recently opened up, and it's like they've got food, they've got a bar, they've got duck pin bowling. So went out there, and for those that don't know what that is, it's little handheld bowling balls, that you roll on a shortened thing, a small little lighter balls, small little lighter pins.
Yeah. Everything's smaller.
Yeah. Everything's smaller. Another night we went to one of our favorite restaurants that has like a happy hour, but an outdoor sort of, turfed area that the kids can run around and have fun in. And then the second Friday night, my mom did a sleepover with both the kids. And I got in 9 holes on Friday night and 9 more on Saturday morning. So made it through, but it was really like every night was just like, I tried to do something. Like one night we did a movie night. Every morning, like I had to adapt my workout schedule. And so we did I started working out here in this home office, right? While the kids watch TV because it just wasn't feasible to, get them going in time to get them where we need to go. Actually, I think I misspoke. My daughter was at her first week of first week of nerd camp, right? And so I did. That's why I did that, because obviously if she had been at the Y, it wouldn't have been that easy. Right. But that's how sleep deprived I am. I'm blending all the weeks together. It's fantastic. So long story short, I had a friend ask me, how I was doing with it, because their spouse was going out of town for a week, and it was just like, hey, I want some ideas. And I was like, honestly, it's not a permanent strategy. not going to go out to dinner that many times, plan that many activities, have that many amazing ideas for 10 nights in a row, but it keeps everybody sane. It keeps everybody happy. And the kids, what I didn't hear that I've heard in previous shorter trips from my wife is a lot of, I miss mom, just because like you can tell that dad's kind of running on fumes at certain points.
Sure. Yeah, I feel that. So that kind of leads into my next thing. So my wife and I, at the end of August, are going to a wedding in San Diego. One of my friends, we're swinging through Los Angeles to visit my parents and my brother. And then one of my other friends who's going to the wedding is driving us down, and then, flying back from San Diego. So ultimately that's a Thursday to Sunday, 4 nights that my kids are going to be without us. So they're going to be staying with my mother-in-law, but they had not ever slept over there before. My daughter has done sleepovers with my parents, but that was here at the house when her little sister was born, when we were all at the same. But she had a sleepover with my mom in a hotel when we were in New York for grandma's 95th, when we were in a hotel room down the hall, but it was just like, I want to sleep with grandma. So they had a slumber party. So that, but again, down the hall. So what we did was, this actually happened on the night that you all met our fathers, but I dropped the girls and my daughter. This is the weekend before Thursday before Father's Day. I dropped my girls and my wife off at my mother-in-law's house. Yeah, that's right. And we all had dinner together. I said good night. I came back here. I spent it with all of you, but I realized that was actually the very first time since I had been a dad that I had the house to myself. I had been away. My wife has had the house to herself when I took the kids to New York to see my grandma by myself for a weekend. But this was the first time I had the house to myself, and I spent it with all of you and recorded an episode. But it was very interesting to be by myself. So that was strange. But that all leads to, so my wife slept over there just so my mother-in-law was comfortable. She left before the girls woke up on Friday morning. This was a Friday when they did not have school because it was the Friday before the change from regular session to summer session. Yeah. So my mother-in-law had them from wake up. We had a date Friday night. I went golfing with some friends on Saturday morning, and then I picked them up. And from my mother-in-law's right after the golf course, we went to this brewery about 30 minutes away that has a giant playground, because shout out to, not a sponsor, but would love for them to sponsor, Jimmy's Famous Seafood from Baltimore brought their food truck down. So I got the crab cake that is the best crab cake I've ever had in my life. I actually went to Baltimore for it last time. To know that I could get it only 20 minutes away, I had to take an opportunity. And it was at a brewery with live music because it happened to be the brewery's 5-year anniversary. So they were having a party. It was excellent. And then, had Father's Day, and, got some nice gifts. But the point is we did the practice overnight. So I think things are going to go really well when we're in San Diego, knock on all of the wood. But at least the girls, also, it was their first time sharing a room. I know your kids share a bedroom all the time. We have 3 bedrooms on the top floor. One's mine and my wife's. The girls each have one. And so it was just really good to know that they could sleep in the same room without waking each other up. So that was great. So a lot of milestones there in that, not just for my girls, but for me, because I realized I could be at the house by myself. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for me, and really my last thing is just, you know, it's a kind of a bunch of quick hit things, but you know, a little bit of summer of adulting, right? Um, so for years now, we've had a lawn guy come and mow and trim our yard, and he doesn't charge us all that much, like $40 a session. But we kind of looked out our window one day and we're like, our grass is like knee high. We haven't seen him in a minute, right? He wasn't the best about like telling us when he was coming. He wasn't best about sending us invoices, and I don't know what happened. But we kind of realized like, I don't think he's showing up. So for the first time in years, we bought a mower. We had one when we initially moved in. I was mowing the yard. It was kind of a pain in the butt, especially with the kid, right? Because we bought this place when my wife was pregnant, and so you know, with the kid around, with my daughter around, you know, it's just kind of a pain in the butt to like step out on a Saturday morning. Not to mention it's Florida. And so, you know, if we were ever, out of gas, we need a new spark plug, the fuel line's got a leak in it, needs to be replaced. It was just like little maintenance issues. And like, if we had a busy weekend of other things we needed to do and like couldn't get to it, like the yard would look awful. Well, we finally sucked it up. We ended up getting an electric mower because in those years we have added more like garden beds and mulched areas and just less grass to mow. So we're like, this will be more manageable. We'll get a mower with 45-minute runtime. That'll be plenty, and it's been more than enough, kind of thing. But yeah, it's been an adventure getting back into my first ever job of mowing lawns, bringing me back. But in addition to that, we have a pool in our backyard, or I should say had a pool in our backyard, because it is a buried, like it's an above ground pool that's like mostly buried. It's got about foot and a half sticking up above the ground, but it's 4 feet deep. And first weekend my wife was in Alaska, went swimming with the kids on Saturday. And second week, the next day on Sunday, I looked out the window and I noticed the pool level had dropped like a foot. So I stuck the hose in there. I added some more chemicals. I wasn't sure what was up. I was like, but this is way too much for just evaporation, right? And filled it up and whatever. And then the next day on Monday, my desk overlooks the pool. If I look out over my shoulder, I look out and I see the jet from the side is now exposed by the surface, a good 18 inches or so down from where the pool line should be. And I'm like, what's going on? And I was busy as could be, managing 2 kids, managing my job, just managing life, that I didn't check on it. A couple days later, I walk out there, the pool's completely drained because there's like a golf ball sized hole at the bottom. One thing leads to another with my wife and I having a conversation about this. And we're like, this is not the pool we want, right? We would love an in-ground pool, but that's a significant $30,000 investment minimum to add that. That's not something that we're going to prioritize right now. So let's spend a few $1,000s. Let's rip it out. Our yard is currently graded in a wrong way, so the water drains toward the house. So it's like, let's just get some people in here with bulldozers, backhoes, whatever tools they need, dig out the pool, then grade our yard appropriately using the dirt that they're moving to just fill in the hole. And maybe get some invasive plant species out of there at the same time. But so we no longer have a pool, and we are planning on just covering it up and waiting a few years and seeing how we like having no pool, and then either going to opposite ends of the spectrum. One, saving up for an in-ground pool that we would actually want, or 2, getting something like a stock tank pool, which is basically like a big circular animal feeding trough that's like 18 to 24 inches deep, kind of a glorified but permanent kiddie pool that you can attach like sprinkler attachments and different things to, and just a place to dip in and cool off, but not really, obviously swim. If we want something, probably be one of those. And then the third one is on top of all of that, we've made the decision, and part of the reason we're not planning on investing in the pool right now, we've made the decision, especially before any tariff nonsense gets too bad, to go ahead and buy a new car. Just because my current little Honda Fit does not accurately meet our needs. And so
it doesn't Honda fit with your needs.
With the car seats in there, you can't fold any of the seats down. You know, it's a big thing. Now it's about to get a little bit better. My daughter is officially moving into a booster seat as early as whenever I put them in, but no later than a week from today. We're flying up to Massachusetts for about 10 days for a vacation. And we just made the decision. She's big enough for a booster seat, and that's going to be a lot easier to travel with than 2 car seats. So she moved into a booster seat, and obviously with that, then we will regain the ability to lay down a back seat easily if we need to. But we just decided that we want something bigger. We're looking at 3-row vehicles, and so probably going to be test driving some cars this weekend. So,
wow, yeah, that was a pretty adult summer so
big
far.
Adulting vibes.
Yeah, I've kind of just had an adjustment summer. I've not hid from all of you that I work for the federal government. There's been a lot of changes since November, or changes since January on how that all is.
Yeah.
And, I no longer work from home unless they decide to randomly let us. What was once a norm is a perk. So that's kind of sucky, just to put it scientifically. And, it's just changed the way we operate as a family. And, I've gone on a lot of emotional roller coasters about how I feel about this whole thing impacting my career. I've gone through anger. I've gone through sadness. I've gone through, right now I'm in annoyance because it just makes it very hard to plan. When people ask me, how's the job going? I say, I have it today. Ask me again tomorrow. It's just hard to operate this way, but it's adjustment. I've really had to, where I'm actually, so professionally I've adjusted. As a father, I'm having a really hard time because year 5, on this podcast, I've mentioned how my older daughter's been a 3-nager and a 4-NATO. 5 is hard, but I'm going with a 5-co-path. And 5 has just been really tough. She's very smart, as I've mentioned. She's very stubborn, like her dad. She's very opinionated, and she's testing boundaries in a way that frustrates me because I feel like she's not learning lessons from day to day. She's not remembering the consequences of certain actions. Yeah. And with everything else going on, and me being slightly more on edge than I have been her whole life, just with accessibility to me and just, work-life balance, it's been really hard for me to adjust to the person she has become at age 5. And I hate saying that, majority, she is now more often she is a pain to be around than she is a joy to be around. And that's a really awful thing to feel about one's kid. And, if I can't say it here, I can't say it anywhere, but it's just really tough because tonight out of nowhere, like we were having a nice night, something clicked in her head. She just started becoming a jerk. And then at one point I said, okay, like it's time to clean up. The alarm went off. She grabs a blanket And she goes, "Where does this go?" And legit like whips it at me. It didn't hurt that much, but she made contact, and I got really mad. It's like, why are you coming into my space and Indiana Jones in me right now? Like, who's doing that? I was literally trying to tell your younger sister, giving her specific things to put away because she does a better job that way. And I got mad. I sent her to her room, and it's just why do you got to be this way sometimes? And I wish she would learn. Like, if you've seen the movie 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, it's as if every time she goes to sleep, she forgets the bad behavior and the consequence that followed it the next day. And we're just on repeat. And, it's hard to adjust to. And so that's been my summer of adjustment on multi fronts.
I got a weird question for you about
Sure.
your daughter. The sentiment of, she's more often not fun to be around than fun to be around. Have you talked to her about that feeling?
I've tried. I don't think I've done a good job of it. I've also not done a good job, as I've mentioned, of reacting to her actions.
Sure.
So it's
not a conversation to have right after she whips you with the blanket or right after she.
Right.
It's not an in the moment conversation. It's when everybody's calm,
Sure.
cool, and collected. I've had that conversation with my daughter.
So
it's gone well. I don't want to paint this as like it's going to solve all your problems. My daughter has this tendency where she's smart enough, where quite often I suspect that she is telling me what she thinks I want to hear. It turns into, it manifests itself when she does something to her brother of like not telling the truth because she has figured out like, if I say this thing, I'm not going to get in trouble. And I can catch on to it. She's not a good enough liar. And so I go, hey, it's time to be honest. Like, you're going to be in more trouble because I just don't believe you. And we've had conversations with her about like the lack of trust and how she has slowly lost it, and how my wife has said this to her and I have said this to her, and it's impacted her, right? Like, she feels it, she understands it, but having the conversations of like, I feel like we're always fighting. How do we get some fun? Like, what can we do differently? And painting it as like a solutions oriented thing. You may get answers. Like, my daughter will specifically bring up like, oh, I want to go to the arcade, or I want to do this thing, right? And I'm like, I'm happy to consider that, right, as something we can do, but like taking you to an arcade more often is not going to solve the like day-to-day problems or like doing this thing. But what I can get to is by continuing to sort of ask that question, is she really craved like more one-on-one time with both me and my wife separately and doing things. And so trying to find ways, because I think it is always going to be a struggle, especially for an older sibling, to, maybe not always, but for a long, long time, longer than I would have guessed, to sort of share the limelight and just always have younger brother, younger sister around. And so that gave us, those conversations gave us the opportunities of like, okay, let's do some more daddy-daughter dates. Let's do some things that are just you and me. Let's do some things that are just you and mom, right? And my son, maybe he will feel this way, but right now he's still living in his 3.5-year-old existence of like, all I have ever known is being around mom, dad, and big sister. And like,
right.
I can't process that like, oh, I should get one-on-one time. Right. That's a thing I should need. So it's kind of different between the two kids, but at least having those conversations, if nothing else, even if she's not giving you the answers that are going to blow your mind or change your perspective,
Right.
at the very least, she's going to feel heard. She could be giving you a load of crap, but space for her to talk, no judgment, just vocalize like what she's feeling. I think that can help the relationship more than she's going to realize.
So I've I have tried that, and I have done that after, a cooling off period. I've said, you and I did not have fun together tonight. You and I yelled at each other a lot. Like, what can we do? But what I have to ask you is, how do I explain the concept of a reason to her? Because she'll say, I say, why are you feeling this way? I don't know. Okay, but but you did X action. Why did you do that? Because. And it said, but what is after the because? Like, what happened? And I don't know I'm running out of ways to try to talk around the word reason, but I don't know how to ask her what a reason is if she doesn't know what a reason is.
I don't have a perfect answer to that, right? Because my daughter will often do that, or she will make some, like, she's gotten to the point where she, like I said, will just make something up that she thinks I want to hear. Like, or the thing that paints her the most like the victim, right?
Sure.
So she gets sympathy for the situation. And like I said, I see through that. But at the same time, it's a little bit of just like asking different questions, like, and maybe not always making, like, fleshing out those reasons the goal, right? Where it's like, I think she's probably gets to a point in the conversation where she's just clamming up because it goes from, whether you intend it that way or your tone is that way, goes from more of like a conversation about her feelings to an interrogation on the quality of her answers. And so I don't think there is a good reason, like, or there is a good method to get out the reason. But it's also just kind of like staying focused of like, okay, yeah, you did this thing. What are you feeling? Tell me what's going on at school. Tell me what's going on at home. Like, what would you have done differently today? Like, and instead of, because I think it feels very like good and therapeutic to talk about, let's get to the root of the issues. Tell me about your mother kind of mentality. Right. And we just don't have the skills. I'm sure this is something that someone could coach one of us on. Maybe a good future podcast guest idea. But I think focusing on just having the conversation in general, and like, if she's not giving the answers you want, remember that that's not the goal, that the goal is like to just let her feel heard. And maybe walk away without the answers and revisit it instead of turning it into a battle. Because I think what it is like, you're not going to win that one particular day. But if you keep that line of communication open, friendly, and you're just always receptive in those moments, then what I've experienced is that my daughter has started just opening up to me more without me prompting. Right. And it takes time and it takes work and it's not perfect. But I think that's kind of the answer, is you just chip away in repairing that relationship and that two-way trust. Right. Because she knows now that, like, if she messes up, she just, like, you think you have set this expectation of her that, like, she is just kind of like going to fly off the handle and you're just like kind of always half braced for it. She might have the similar expectation of you. Or the expectation that, like, if you talk to her, that it's going to turn into questions. And I don't mean that to sound too accusatory or anything like that. But these are all feelings that I have gone through, right? Just like going through it a little bit earlier than you, where I just walk away from conversations, talk to my wife about it, and she just sort of told me, like, don't make it so much about like getting the answers you feel like you need, just to sort of accept the answer she gives, because, like, what's the, like, right now you're not communicating and you're not getting the answers. Solve one of those things and maybe the other comes.
No, that makes sense. I think part of it is my inability also to articulate the actual definition of a reason. Like, if you ask me what is a reason, I'd tell you, it's the reason of why things why people do things. It's a hard definition to, even for me at 36, to come up with, and it's hard for me to ask her. I try to talk, like I said, I try to talk around it, You know, why are you
I
feeling
think,
this way? Like, what went through your mind?
your personal experiences, and I think it's super helpful when I've really tried this. I'm not always perfect at it, but when I'm giving examples of ways I was frustrated, even if the most recent example of my frustration is me being frustrated at her and her being frustrated at me, I try not to make that the example, because somewhere in there, if I don't choose my words correctly, she becomes the bad guy of the story. So I pick somebody else, whether it's her mom, whether it's something that happened at work, whatever it is, I pick another example of frustration so that I can explain my reason without giving her any cause to be defensive. And that kind of example setting, this is all a guess here, right? That's kind of all we're doing as parents. But my thought process on that is that, like, if I pick the example of why I was frustrated with her, what she's going to hear is what she did wrong and is more likely to clam back up than like get the example of the reasoning and the feelings and managing those emotions.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think I know I'll have an opportunity to try that soon. So I'll give it a whirl. Yeah.
Should we work on the dad pod a little bit?
Let's do it. So last week I was 181.4. This week I actually weighed in at 182.4. Nice. So I went a pound the way I didn't want to go. I'm hoping that it's a combination of maybe I'm adding some muscle. Maybe I'm plateauing. You know, I'm looking good. My pants are really loose. My belt is dangling. I refuse to wear the belt that would actually fit right now because I like the way it looks with a dangle. It also could be the fact that I was surprised today with a dinner from my sister-in-law. Happened to be driving through Princeton, the hometown of my wife, and they stopped at this place called Hoagie Haven, where, you know, they make hoagies. It's a staple. I believe Guy Fieri's been there.
They put everything that can go into a fryer into a hoagie.
Yes, and I tonight ate what they call the Mac Daddy, which is a bacon cheeseburger hoagie with mac and cheese wedges. So not just pieces of mac and cheese that has been deep fried in cheese to be its own thing, with fries in it, as well as honey mustard and hot sauce. I only had half of it, so I'm proud of myself. But I would say that sandwich possibly weighed me down on the scale tonight, because there was not any output in between when I ate it and when I stepped on the scale. So then that happened. I did have a breakthrough on Monday at the gym. I had mentioned that I've been raising like my speed 0.1 every time I hit a 30-minute mark. I got to 8.2 miles per hour for 30 minutes on Monday. So that's, for those of you doing math, that was 4.1 miles. I have not gotten to 8.3 yet. I can't seem to get past about 22 minutes at that point. But, you know, maybe that's just too fast for where I'm at, and that's fine. But, you know, it's, you know, where I'm at right now, and I'm actually feeling myself get there, and this is where I've had a problem in the past, is I'm starting to get a little bit bored. So I do think I need to make a workout change so that I can keep up the progress. But there is progress. You know, I've been doing a lot of low weight, high rep, but in that, once I get to roughly 3 sets of 25, I try to up the weight a bit and then start back at 15 or 20, depending on where my strength is. So I am improving. You know, things are going really well. Problem is, it is getting a little repetitive, and I don't want to fall into the trap I've fallen into before. But I'm still going to keep prioritizing working out when I'm at work. So that's not going to stop. But, you know, I definitely need to come up with something else.
Yeah. And I think it's also probably, you know, there's probably some benefits there of switching it up every now and then, like for your body, your mind, your body as well. Just, you know, changing out the exercises you're doing. you'll probably notice in that first week, I recently went through this where I did some exercise that I hadn't done in a few months, but my DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, was much higher the first time after doing those exercises. And they're not anything super crazy, but it's just you're working the muscles in a slightly different way and they're adapting. For me, I'll be perfectly honest. I haven't weighed in this week. It's been, like I mentioned, I'm a little sleep deprived. Work's been crazy, chaos with different things breaking and needing repair. One thing I didn't mention in the story time was like my wife's car died at one point. And so it's just been a lot of that. And this past weekend, my dad was in town, and that's not like an excuse for any one particular thing, but, just kind of ate out a little bit more and had a lot of leftovers in the fridge and have needed quick bites for work. And so I haven't been tracking my calories. I haven't weighed in this week. And like, really what I'm working on right now is, I recognize the behavior pattern. And I think that's a good, like, sort of first step of like, okay, don't let this spiral into like, bad habits, right? Don't let one bad meal, one bad day, one bad week, you can recover from all that. What you can't recover from is, easily is letting a few months go by, where you're not, focusing on those things. I'm still working out, and all those kinds of things, but I do think it's like need to get some good sleep in the, at some point. Probably won't be any of the next few nights. We'll try to catch up a little bit on the weekend, but also just like reprioritize, like eating a good breakfast, eating a good lunch, eating a good dinner, smart snacking, and not just like grabbing the convenience foods that are available, because that's kind of what I've done. And I don't think, like, when I look in the mirror and, put on my clothes, like, I'm not like, it's been a week and a half, right? I'm not going to feel some dramatic change, but I'm like just noticing the patterns of like, okay, lock back into the things that make you feel good and use the body, use your food, as fuel for your body so that you feel as good as you possibly can. Because I'm like, I am sure that like the sleep is causing bad eating habits, and the bad eating habits are affecting my sleep, and both are affecting my mood, and both are affecting how I just feel and walk around during the day. And I'm like, okay, get back after it, but do it one meal at a time. Don't, I'm trying to fight the urge to like, okay, next week I'm just going to eat like 1,200 calories a day and make up for it. Because I was right? Because I'm like, I can't go there again, because that's just going to lead to a sine wave shaped cycle. It won't work for me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was actually talking to my younger brother earlier today. I think I do feel like I'm at a bit of like a plateau with regard to just where my body is right now. So a change is probably needed, but I just got to figure out what that's going to be. So,
yeah. And I mean, at the same time, like plateaus can come and go, right? You could keep doing the same thing and, a couple of weeks later, start making changes again, right? Your body can just be adapting a little bit. And I think one of the biggest things I try to tell myself, at least, is make sure you've got a good sample size, right? And you're not overreacting to one data point, one thing, right? Your sodium and fat and carb packed sandwich that you have can easily spike some water retention, whatever it might be. There's tons of things.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for working on the Dad Pod with us tonight. Remember, tune in next week for our fun episode that we will be recording in a couple of minutes. As always, remember to like and subscribe on YouTube and keep dadding hard.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.